Before Mr. Pretorius proceeds, I just want to go back to an issue that we dealt with earlier about loyalty to a party and appointments. You posed a question, and I don't know whether you expressed a view, and I want to establish that. You posed a question as to why loyalty to the party should not count in an appointment, whether somebody should be appointed. Did I understand that part correctly, that you posed a question along those lines, or did I misunderstand?
No, I did not pose a question.
Or did you express a view?
I was just explaining what happens.
Yes.
Because that's a universal thing.
Yes.
Parties can't take people who don't like the party to come and work for the government of that party. That's the point I was just making.
Yes. Maybe let me just ask, is it your understanding that loyalty to the ruling party or a political party should be a factor in appointments that are made in government?
No, I'm not necessarily saying that should be the case. I'm saying political parties globally, once they win elections, they take their people to the government to place them, because those people are expected to implement the policies. So loyalty goes without saying. It's not the only, but it does not mean you cannot take somebody who is a professional, who is willing to participate in government. I was just dealing with it insofar as it appears here as a point that was made.
Yes, no, I think I understand you to say loyalty to a party should never be the only factor.
Yes.
That part I understand. The question I ask is whether it should be a factor at all. Whether you...
No,
and I'm simply asking it because you and I had an engagement earlier on around that, and I thought you had asked the question, why should it not be considered? But I think you have said no, you were not asking a question. So then I think maybe it might be good, because somebody else might have understood the way that I understood. It might be important if you have a view on that to make it clear what your view is, and because it leads to the question of what would have been expected of government ministers and the president himself and the deputy president who sits on the deployment committee when among the names that they see for a particular post, they see somebody that comes from the deployment committee. Were they expected to take into account that this must be this must be somebody with loyalty to the party, or were they not supposed to? And you can answer in terms of your own understanding, which may be right, which may be wrong, but your own understanding with the experience that you have both in the ANC and in government.
No, what I was saying, I was not saying that it should be one of the things that you search for. In fact, it does not even arise generally in the discussions.
Yes.
The problem is that it is here as if it is a big factor. It's not.
Okay.
That's why, rather than to get into the details, I was saying all parties in the world, when they win elections, they bring people they trust, people who are loyal to the party, people who have got professions. It's not a factor. It's not the only factor. In fact, in the discussions, you will find that this issue has never arisen. Are you loyal to the ANC? You can't. That's why I was saying these are individual views, perhaps emanating from individual experiences, I don't know.
Yes. Okay. Well, as you explained now, I had some things to the effect, it's not the only fact.
Okay.
So I go back to the question whether, as far as you know, with your experience in the ANC, with your experience in government, is it something, was it one of the factors that at least the ANC as the ruling party expected government ministers and the president and deputy president to have regard to when they select who should fill certain positions?
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
When, for an example, advertisements are made for a particular position, many citizens of in the country, some of whom we don't even know they belong to which party or they believe in what policy, they apply and they go through the process. No one in that kind of interview asks the political issues. It does not feature.
Okay.
It's a given.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pretorius?
Thank you. Mr. Zuma, on page 405, paragraph 28 and following, Ms. Hogan relates her experiences in relation to Transnet and appointments within Transnet. And certain of the detail of her narrative mentions engagements with yourself, and I therefore need to put them to you for your comment. Just by way of background, in paragraph 29, Ms. Hogan refers to the resignation of Ms. Maria Ramos as CEO of Transnet in February 2009. She then says that the Transnet board, after a careful selection process and extensive engagement with the then Minister of Public Enterprises, Bridget Mabandla, recommended Pravin Gordhan. Do you know of those events? It's not necessary to go into any detail, but just by way of background to what follows.
I think that happened, yeah.
Yes, and she says in paragraph 30, a week later Mr. Gordhan withdrew his candidature, and several months later he became the Minister of Finance. That again by way of background.
Yes.
But what she says in paragraph 30 is that what she describes as a fiction arose at the time, which was untrue, that Siyabonga Gama, Mr. Gama, then CEO of Transnet Freight Rail, was second on the list of preferred candidates for the position of Transnet CEO. She says there was no such preferential list. Do you know anything about that?
There was no
preferential list. She says that at the time, there was a belief or an understanding amongst some, a fiction, she says, that there was a list of preferred candidates, and that second on that list was Mr. Gama. Do you know anything
I
about
remember that, yeah.
I'm sorry?
I say I remember that.
Now, do you say there was such a list? She says there was no such list. If you, let me just ask you to look at paragraph 30 and read to you what she says. A fiction arose at that time which was untrue, that Siyabonga Gama, Mr. Gama, then CEO of TFR, that's Transnet Freight Rail, was second on the list of preferred candidates for the position of Transnet CEO. There was no such preferential list. Do you have a comment?
Well, I may not remember the details of who was in the list or not, but all I know is that Gama himself had also applied. And I know that Mr. Gordhan as well. So when he withdrew his the candidature, and I think the discussion was the second one, instead of starting another process, because Gama was known. He had worked there for a long time, his capabilities and everything. And in the process, those who were doing the process felt that here is a man who will fit into this kind of situation. There was then, I think, a bit of a discussion. Other people wanted that we should have another round or something. But at the end, this process that I'm talking about, that many people get involved, the view in the process was that, but this man, we know him. He has been working here. He's capable enough. And then at the end, I think there was kind of a stronger view that, no, let us take the decision that we should take him. It was a process of the discussion, particularly from, I think, the cabinet committee even to the cabinet. So it was a discussion. It was not one person talking to the other. It was that process I talked about that produced that result.
All right. That would have occurred shortly before or after May 2009. You say there was discussion about the next in line, Mr. Gama, being appointed to the position. But she says something in paragraph 31 as follows. After Mr. Gordon's withdrawal...
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius. He said the next in line. That might suggest as if you are saying he said the next on the list, whereas he said he wouldn't know details about the lists. So you might wish to, you might not have intended that.
What did you say about Mr. Gama being discussed in the absence of Mr. Gordon? I understood you said that his candidature was recommended by some as being the next person for consideration. I don't want to get into a debate about in line or lists or anything.
Because he had applied himself.
Sorry?
Yeah, he, as far as I remember, he had applied as well for the job. So, in a sense, in the selection committee, I think he was one of those who had applied.
And did some feel that he should, in the absence of Mr. Gordon, be
Yes.
appointed to the
Yes,
post?
that's what I remember.
Okay. The selection committee you're referring to, what selection committee are you referring to?
The minister. The minister, if he or she wants to appoint a DG, she then forms a panel that will be interviewing people.
Right.
That would that be? You're talking about a DG now, Mr.
Yeah.
Gama wasn't going to be a DG, but you are making an example.
Yeah, an example, yes.
In the case of a DG, would that selection committee that the relevant minister creates or establishes, would it include cabinet ministers?
Yes, yes.
Or
Cabinet ministers or deputy ministers as well.
And would it consist only of members of the executive, or it could include people outside of the executive?
Not generally people of the executive.
People of the executive, okay. That's in the case of a DG.
Not only the DG,
Yes,
even board members.
even board members.
Even board members.
And
That
CEOs.
the process is the same, yes.
And CEOs of SOEs.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
In paragraph 31, again by way of background, Mr. Zuma, and that's on page 406, Ms. Hogan said, after Mr. Gordon's withdrawal, the board had difficulties getting a firm direction from government. They wanted to commence with a new search, but could not get an unequivocal endorsement to do this. At this point, the election had begun. She does say that Minister Mabandla did, however, approve the appointment of the Chief Financial Officer of Transnet, Mr. Chris Wells, as the acting CEO of Transnet, and Anoj Singh, a Transnet employee, as the acting Chief Financial Officer of Transnet. again, by way of background, do you have any comment? Do you recall this happening?
I'm not sure because the withdrawal of Praveen brought some activities, and I may not remember everything,
Or
but
the
there was
details.
activities. This may be so, it may not, but I can't remember exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
In relation to the further search, it is said in paragraph 32 on page 406, the Transnet board nevertheless embarked on a further search as they felt that they could not abandon their fiduciary responsibilities. On the 18th of June 2009, the Transnet chairperson, Mr. Pashwana, met with me and submitted a memorandum dated 9 June 2009, which was annexed to the original statement, which amongst other things recommended the appointment of a candidate for the position of CEO. This was a highly capable and experienced black candidate who had the requisite experience and admirable managerial capabilities. It seems that in this narrative being related here that there was a further search embarked upon by the Transnet board, and this resulted in a memorandum being submitted to the minister for the appointment of a highly experienced, capable and experienced black candidate. It appears that that person was Sipho Maseko. Do you know of that?
Well, I don't remember exactly now whether, but the name Sipho Maseko I remember. I can't just remember the background, the details.
And she says, it is important to note that the board had nominated only one candidate for the appointment, that is Mr. Maseko.
Mm-hmm.
In any event, if we could go then to paragraph 33, because this now becomes directly relevant to your own involvement, Mr. Zuma. She says in paragraph 33 at the bottom of page 406, approximately a month after my appointment as the Minister of DPE, I met with President Zuma and gave him a full background about the developments in Transnet. I informed him that the Transnet AGM was coming up very soon and that a GCEO and a chairperson of Transnet would have to be appointed as a matter of urgency. I briefed him about the board's candidate of choice, whom I too endorsed, and the inquiry potentially implicating Mr. Gama. Do you recall that engagement?
Yes, I do.
Is that a fair summary of what was discussed?
Yes.
Then in paragraph 34 on page 407, Ms. Hogan says the following: I was shocked and disappointed when President Zuma informed me that he was adamant that Mr. Gama was his only choice for GCEO. I informed him that that was not possible and that Mr. Gama was not the board's choice, and I could not override the board as they had undergone a very professional selection process. Do you have any comment about that?
I've just read it few lines.
Please.
Okay.
I don't remember myself saying these things. How could I have said this when somebody is being charged with serious charges? And I would say, no, take the person. I don't remember me insisting on this.
Well, perhaps in fairness, we should take it step by step, Mr. Zuma. What she says is at that meeting, you informed her that Mr. Gama was your only choice for GCEO.
Was?
Your choice for GCEO.
And not just choice. You were right. Your only choice.
It couldn't be like that. We don't work like that. As I say, there is a process that determines who becomes either the winning candidate. What the ministers at times do, they will come to the president just to brief the president, not to discuss whether we should do this or not. And I'm not even fond of making such determined statements, really. I would not have said this, not at all.
Well, I just want to say this is one of those parts of her statement where it's quite important that your answer be the answer that is really to the best of your recollection, because the way she has put it is quite emphatic. So it's important to distinguish between you don't recall and I didn't say it or I couldn't have said it, so that one can understand it.
I think that's, I was saying I couldn't have said this.
You could not have said
No.
this. Yes.
Because it means I would also be undermining the process itself. At a level when the minister consults, you might express a view or not, but it does not determine the final decision. Because the final decision must be a product of the process. I would not have said this because I would have been saying, this is my person, finish. It doesn't work like that. It's
Well,
not
certainly that's the impression that comes out of that paragraph.
Not at all.
That's the impression that one gets when one reads that paragraph, that you were saying, this is my only choice, and you are not too prepared to look at another candidate. That's
not
my
at
impression
all.
of what she is saying.
No. I could not have said
You
so.
could not have said so.
No.
Yes. I understand two things from your answer, Mr. Zuma. Firstly, that you would not have said that. Secondly, as I understand what you said, that a statement such as that would show that this was a complete deviation from the proper process.
Absolutely. Because I would be saying there was no need for discussions. This is a choice I've made, finish. No. The process doesn't work like that.
It follows that the second sentence would also not have been part of that conversation, but let me not make any assumptions and let me put it to you. I informed him, that is Ms. Hogan informing yourself, that was not possible and that Mr. Gama was not the board's choice and I could not override the board as they had undergone a very professional selection process. Do you recall that being said at the meeting?
I don't recall this.
And then, do you recall being informed that Mr. Gama was the subject of an inquiry?
Sorry?
Do you recall being informed by Ms. Hogan at that meeting that Mr. Gama was the subject of an inquiry?
Yes, there was a time where Mr. Gama was accused. I remember the period.
Yes.
I'm not very sure whether we discussed this. I think it came as just a report about Mr. Gama, not discussing whether we should take him or not. That's why I'm saying these answers that are put here that I said them, I don't remember them.
All right. Then,
I never said this.
Are you saying you do have a recollection of the fact that at some stage you got to know that Mr. Gama was facing some disciplinary process, but you can't say whether you were told that in a meeting with Ms. Hogan.
No.
You are not sure about that part.
In fact, it was a well-known fact
Yes.
that Gama faced charges.
Yes.
Everybody knew in the country.
Yes. And is your recollection that that was known at the time when an appointment of the GCEO of Transnet was supposed to happen?
Yes,
Okay.
because the allegations against Gama took a long time.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
In the last 4 lines of that paragraph, Ms. Hogan says the following. She says, President Zuma said that if that was my view, no appointment whatsoever was to be made at Transnet until Mr. Gama's disciplinary process was over. We agreed that I would provide him with more detailed information for him to further apply his mind to. Do you recall anything of that nature being said at that consultation with yourself?
I've got difficulties with this with this report because a consultation that the ministers do, they will be reporting. They will be saying this is what has happened, and me as a minister, this is what I think, or the board, this is what the board thinks. And then, is there any other process that is going forward? You report that. And from the position of the president, you say, fine, go ahead. When things are okay, you'll come back. I don't remember discussing an individual like Gama to say this cannot happen, this is my choice. I could not have said so.
Maybe I could say this, and maybe it's something that comes later in her statement. I'm saying I want to say something that maybe comes later in her statement.
Okay.
Maybe the noise of the aircon might be affecting us. We'll see what we can do if it interferes. I think at some stage in her statement, when one reads it, one gets the impression, and I want to put it no higher than that, gets the impression that she may, in regard to these appointments, whether of a CEO of an SOE or the chairperson of a board, that she would be putting forward to cabinet, that she would want first to have an idea whether the president has no problem with a particular candidate. That's the impression I get. She might not be saying that. And in a way, when I read that, I thought, well, maybe if you are going to a certain meeting and you want to put a certain proposal, you might want to check with certain people who are important in the meeting if they have any problem with your proposal, because if they have a problem, you might wish to rethink. But if they are fine, you feel confident to then take it forward to a bigger meeting. That's what I was thinking. So it may well be that if she did come to you with the names, it may be that the idea was to check whether you had any problem with the names. Would that sound like something that would happen at cabinet with ministers?
Normally, ministers would come to the president before. It's not just a thing which perhaps does not happen. It does.
Does happen, yes.
To say, the DG, I'm recommending this one or whatever.
Yes.
For the president to know. Yes. They could also engage in the discussion.
Yes.
It's possible.
Yes.
And the president might have views and say, have you checked this or whatever? Well, what I'm saying, the president can't say you can't do this.
Yes, okay.
Because that decision must be taken by the collective.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
And do your comments apply equally to an SOE as well as a government department?
Sorry?
No, it's just been drawn to my attention that your comments might have been directed at government departments rather than state-owned entities.
Even the state-owned enterprises, they come as well.
She proceeds in paragraph 35, Mr. Zuma, to say, the problem was that President Zuma, two of my cabinet colleagues, and elements within the ANC and the tripartite alliance, including the Secretary General Gwedi Mantashe, were very vocal that the candidate of their choice, Mr. Gama, would become the next GCEO of Transnet, despite the fact that the black-dominated board of Transnet, after a rigorous and professional selection process, were clearly of the view that Mr. Gama was not an appropriate candidate. Her comments then are extended in so far as they relate to support for Mr. Gama to a range of other persons and entities, or persons rather. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, I'm not sure here because she's now including many people
Yes.
around this name.
Yes. She
She
says that,
knew.
if I may just put it to you on the basis that's fair to you, she says they were very vocal about it.
That's what she said.
Yes. Do you have any knowledge of that?
I don't know. I don't know because we don't meet as an alliance to discuss those matters. Those are just government matters. So I'm not sure, as you can see, she's really pulling everybody to an issue of a specific government. She's pulling the Secretary General and everybody else. We never discussed this with the Secretary General or other alliance people. As a minister, maybe from the union point of view, people must have been coming to her, I don't know.
She said there was vocal support and widespread vocal support for Mr. Gama to be appointed as the next GCEO of Transnet. It may be that she implies, maybe not, but perhaps I should put it to you that it was well known that many people supported Mr. Gama.
I'm sure as a minister, because they also do consult with the unions. Because at times unions have views about people who are appointed. For the fact that she said people are vocal, it means she has been maybe canvassing or talking to many people.
I guess that amounts to saying you can neither admit or deny that. That's what she says, and it's possible.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
What was your view, Mr. Zuma, about the appointment of Mr. Gama as GCEO of Transnet?
But
What was your view as to whether he should be appointed or not?
I think I was looking at the process, that whatever happens at the end, that will be the decision. I did not put my preference on Gama or whoever.
What would you have, what do you think would have been your view if she told you, as she says she did, that there was a rigorous selection process that had been followed by the board of considering a number of candidates, one of whom was Mr. Gama, but that after considering all the candidates, the board had recommended Mr. Is it Maseko?
Yes.
Mr. Maseko. Do you have an idea what your normal reaction would be when a minister comes with names after a process like that? would your natural or normal reaction be if that is what the board wants and you are happy, then it's fine? Or would your position be, just give me some more information about this candidate or all these candidates, I want to look at them, I want to scrutinize them, or take it to cabinet and we'll see what cabinet says? What would be your normal reaction when a minister comes with a candidate's name after such a process?
No. In fact, in the majority of cases, that's what ministers do. To say, here is a process, the board looked at this, they prefer this one, the minister might give some details, it might not give some details, to say, therefore, the process is moving forward. Boards recommend. The boards themselves know that their recommendation could be accepted or not accepted by cabinet. And that there is no process that can be stopped halfway. It would just be to alert the president about what has happened. Partly because in the cabinet, the president would be chairing most of the time. The debate would be among the ministers, just making the president aware that these are the issues. And the minister could also express her own preference and the reasons why he or she feels this would be the right person.
And maybe I could ask this as well. Do you have any recollection whether in such a process, when a minister comes to cabinet with a name, whether he or she would include information about other candidates who were not successful according to the board, or it would just be for the information about the candidate that is being recommended? Is that something that you are able to remember, or is that something you don't remember?
At times the minister would give information about others. For an example, it might say there were so many candidates. This one is one. The concentration would be on this one. In the process of the discussion, people can say, let us hear number two. What was the kind of thing? Or the minister could mention it, even at the beginning. In other words, it varies how they presented the matter.
Okay, thank you.
In relation to SOE board appointments, do I understand it correctly?
Okay, I'm sorry. I think Mr. Skakane has got something.
Chair,
Yes.
this is poor. This is really poor.
Please come forward so I can hear you.
I know you said, Chair, I can't tell you about your jobs, but I will now.
No. I said you can make submissions and everyone must do their job.
Chair, this is,
Yes.
I must say, this is poor. This witness, right, comes here, you have Annexure D, which tells you what the process is. This is no expert in those processes. You have it in Annexure D in your document, and you are told by the minister. I do not think it's fair to ask someone who was head of state to explain to you the process of selecting people when you have the document that tells you from the right person. I don't think it's fair to this witness.
Well, Mr. Skakane, sometimes you have a laid down process and you have a different understanding of persons of what the actual process was that was followed. Sometimes a laid down process is not followed. So the question was meant to get what his understanding was of what the process was, as opposed to what the process was that was prescribed by law.
And Chair, if I may ask,
Yes.
what's that got to do with fraud and corruption?
It's got to do with whether where it is alleged that, as it is here, that he said he had only one choice of a candidate, whether it is possible that his understanding of the process is different from what is laid down. Genuine understanding.
Chair, I don't know. This is really poor. He's told you that he couldn't have said it. We've spent 35 minutes on a question my client has answered, and you are asking him, you're not asking him whether he wanted a deviation. He's being asked about how does the process unfold. You have a document that tells you that.
Well, Mr. Skakane, I've just said to you, you can have a law that says this is the process, and you can have people who are supposed to apply that process having a different understanding. And the question is aimed at establishing whether his understanding, what his understanding was of the process.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, to just make one comment from the legal team's point of view on this issue.
Yes.
At the beginning of this commission, you made it public that its task, the task of the investigators and the legal team, was to try and understand, in relation to its terms of reference, what happened.
Yes.
To try and understand how it happened.
Yes.
And to make recommendations in regard to the correction or assurance that whatever is found to have happened, ultimately, in your recommendations, would not happen again.
Yes.
The appointment of persons to state-owned entities is an integral part of all three legs of that inquiry. It is something which is being debated intensely up to now by other witnesses, and it's something that the former president, with his knowledge and experience, can assist with, and I'm quite sure he's willing to assist with it. He's not being accused of anything in that process.
And again, Mr. Zuma, I just want to say that where you don't know, feel free to say that I don't know. Thank you.
In any event, Mr. Zuma, if we may continue. In paragraph 36, the deponent to this affidavit, Ms. Hogan, raises another concern about Mr. Gama's candidacy, and it was a report that he had been engaged in a contractual relationship with a cabinet colleague, Mr. Nyanda. Did you know anything about this allegation at the time?
Yes, I remember slightly that there was something that had happened between the two. Yes.
And do you recall that there were allegations about the propriety or lawfulness of those engagements between Mr. Nyanda and Mr. Gama? Do you
Yes.
recall anything about it? You do?
Yes, I remember that. I don't remember the detail, but I remember the incident.
She goes on in paragraph 37 to say, notwithstanding all this, Mr. Gama's supporters claimed he was being victimized by an anti-transformation white cabal that had instituted inquiry and later disciplinary proceedings to prevent him from being appointed the GCEO. Do you know anything about those sentiments expressed by Mr. Gama's supporters? Not sure we need to dwell there too much, but
I think there were murmurs about the victimization or whatever. I don't remember the details, But I know that this, as I said, the Gamma thing was a well-known thing in the country, the problems that he had with the company. But I can't remember the details.
She does note in paragraph 39 on page 408 that Mr. Gama was later found guilty of unwarranted criticism of Transnet executives, a charge serious enough to warrant dismissal. I don't want to go into the detail of the inquiry and the charges, but that's what she says. Do you recall that there was a guilty finding in relation to Mr. Gama's inquiry?
I think there was some conclusion, but I can't remember exactly how the final conclusion was.
I think to assist you, it'll become clearer later, so we can park that for the
Okay.
moment. She says in paragraph 40 on page 408, on or about 28 July 2009, I sent President Zuma a comprehensive report, attached here to Mark D, with annexures detailing the selection process, the strong motivation for the appointment of the candidate that had been recommended to me by the Transnet board, details of the procurement irregularities under investigation by the Transnet Audit Committee, the corporate governance aspects of CEO appointments, including the legal opinions prepared by Mr. Michael Katz and Advocate Wim Trengrove, SC, in this regard. However, President Zuma did not respond. Did you recall receiving such a report? Would you have read it, or would a subordinate of yours have read it and advised you? What would the position have been?
No, I received the report. It was just a report like all other reports for me to know.
And did you note it? Did you read it, or did you ask someone
read
to
it.
advise you about it?
I read it. But it was a report like all other reports.
Paragraph 40, the report itself is at page 422. Of bundle GGB, exhibit GGB, and it's headed Decision Memorandum. It's addressed to you as President from Ms. Barbara Hogan. It's dated the 28th of July 2009.
What page are you in?
422, read 422.
Mr. Pretorius.
Yes, I've got
I'm
it.
sorry, I thought you were looking at it.
No,
Thank you.
I've got it.
Let's leave aside the legal advice contained in the report for the moment. We may return to it if it's necessary or you want to, but there is a summary of the report at page 423. Which says in paragraph 2.1, following the resignation of Ms. Ramos, the board initiated a CEO recruitment process to ensure continuity in Transnet business operations. As a consequence of the withdrawal of the board's unanimously recommended preferred candidate, Mr. Pravin Gordon, it says, it should not be, The board extended its search for a suitable candidate and has now recommended a further preferred candidate with 2 other shortlisted preferred candidates for appointment as CEO. In paragraph 2.2, she says, or the report says, the recruitment and selection process conducted by the board raised questions regarding the appropriate authority to appoint the CEO, as well as the correct process to follow. Let's leave that aside for the moment. It says in 2.3, the recruitment process was initiated at an unfortunate time when the board was also undertaking investigations into alleged corrupt activities against some of the senior executives at Transnet. This time overlap may have raised concerns regarding the process and criteria followed in the recruitment and selection of candidates. The process conducted by the board has been assessed and found to be robust, insofar as it was referenced to labor law compliant and internationally recognized candidate profiling. The important point in the summary, at least, is made at paragraph 2.4. Due to the delay in the appointment of the CEO and media speculation, it has now become critical for the shareholder to resolve on the appointment of the CEO and to re-establish leadership stability at Transnet. This memorandum serves to address questions and concerns raised with a view to agreement on the way forward in appointing a CEO for Transnet as soon as possible. Do you have any comment in relation to 2.4? I would assume, but perhaps I shouldn't, that it would be in any state-owned entity critical for there to be leadership stability at all times, and that would include Transnet, and that undue delay in the appointment of a suitable candidate to CEO position would, in general circumstances, be undesirable. Would you accept that?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure. I'm not
Sorry,
sure
did
whether
you
that,
nod?
that was
I
an
missed that.
answer, whether there was an answer or not.
No, I was saying yes, there was.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
I thought I
Oh,
nodded.
okay.
Sorry. It's just that the record would not pick up a
Oh,
nod.
okay,
We
okay,
may be
okay.
filmed for other reasons, but not for that reason. In paragraph 3.13, she summarizes the object of the memorandum. It's at page 426, Mr. Zuma. She says, in view of the aforementioned, it is considered prudent that the board,
Sorry, where are you?
page 426, paragraph
426.
3.13, I'm sorry,
426.
426, red 426, para 313.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Do you have it, Mr. Zuma?
Yeah.
Yes. She says, in view of the aforementioned, it is considered prudent that the board, in consultation with the relevant minister, conducts a recruitment and selection process for a CEO and recommends suitable candidates to the minister for consideration and appointment, subject to approval by cabinet.
Yes.
That is, in very, very broad summary, the process.
Yeah.
And I think you've agreed to that. She then details the recruitment and selection process of the CEO of Transnet that was followed, And she goes into some detail in paragraph 3.2.2 of the type of procedures conducted in such a process by the board's Corporate Governance and Nominations Committee. Probably not necessary to go into any detail, but just to remark that there's a thorough process of examination of candidates on a number of criteria. You note that, yes. And that's in accordance with your own understanding.
Yes, yes.
The paragraph 3.2, various candidates are mentioned, including Mr. Gama and several others. And then in paragraph 3.2.4, by way of background, there's a recordal that the board unanimously recommended Mr. Pravin Gordhan. But I'd like to go to the next page, if I may, because we know that his candidature was withdrawn. To the top of page 428, where it says the preferred internal candidate, Mr. Siyabonga Gama, was thoroughly considered, but the board is of a view that his assessment showed that there are important gaps relative to the requirements for the position. According to the independent assessment and board evaluation, he currently requires greater cognitive development to handle the complexity of this position. You say you would have had regard to this report. Do you recall that observation being conveyed to you?
Which one? I was just looking at your page.
I'm sorry,
I mean
page
the paragraph.
428, if you want, the first paragraph.
Page 33?
428, I think. Did you say 428?
428.
At the top. At the top. Must I ask somebody to come and assist you?
Yes.
Yes.
So.
Could
I think so.
go and look for page 428 at the top.
Is it page on the red? What
On the red one.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Each time we talk about a page, it will be the red numbers at the top.
Yes, okay.
Yes, okay.
Fine, I was looking at the paragraphs.
Oh, okay.
Are you holding me to that, DCJ?
Well, you had to deviate yesterday at some stage. Yeah, okay. Do you want to read it and then put your question again?
Yes, may I read it to you? Perhaps I should
Are you
go-
reading it from page 27 up to 28,
Yes,
428?
yes, correct,
Okay,
Chair.
the paragraph he's going to read, Mr. Zuma, starts on the previous page, which is 427 at the bottom, and continues at the top of page 428.
Paragraph 3.2.5 on
Page
red
427.
427. I'm going to read it. In
Uh,
addition,
But I think he must see it as well. Can you see it?
What is the paragraph?
4232,
3.2.5,
yeah. At the bottom.
2.5.
on the
Yes,
bottom
at
of page red 427.
Yes, yes.
You have it?
Yes, okay.
It reads, in addition, the board disclosed the names of all the candidates shortlisted for final interviews. The list was not presented in order of priority and comprised of the following names: Ms. Moses, Mr. Gama, Mr. Gloti, Mr. Ketso Gordhan, and Mr. Pravin Gordhan. Regarding the assessment of the other candidates, the board reported to the minister that, quote, the other candidates were found to be less suitable for the position or not suitable at all. The preferred internal candidate, Mr. Siyabonga Gama, was thoroughly considered, but the board is of a view that his assessment showed that there are important gaps relative to the requirements for the position. According to the independent assessment and board evaluation, he currently requires greater cognitive development to handle the complexity of this position. In short, the board's position was that after consideration of his assessment, including an independent assessment, it determined that he was not suitable for appointment to the post. Were you aware of that sentiment, and that was the sentiment of the board?
Yes, I think so.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That sentiment is repeated in paragraph 3.2.7 on page 428, which reads, on 9 March 2009, the Transnet board provided the minister with a summary of assessments of all the shortlisted candidates and in addition informed the minister of allegations of misconduct involving one of the shortlisted candidates, Mr. Siyabonga Gama. The board cited the reasons why Mr. Siyabonga Gama was not recommended for appointment in the first place, and the inherent pending uncertainty regarding the outcome of the investigations against him as to why it should read, he should not now be appointed to the position of CEO. Were you aware of those sentiments?
Yes.
And then it concludes, well, a conclusion in paragraph 3.2.12 on page 429. After the interviews were conducted, the Corporate Governance and Nominations Committee recommended 3 preferred candidates who could fill the position of CEO, namely Mr. Sipho Maseko, Mr. Tao Morwe, and Mr. Khomotso Pihlela. With full and unanimous support of the Transnet board, recommended Mr. Sipho Maseko for appointment as CEO, and then it goes into the reasons why he was recommended. Were you aware of that recommendation?
I think so, yes.
Then there is a section of the report addressed to you dealing with the further processes, particularly those conducted on Transnet's behalf by Ernst & Young and others in relation to various matters relevant to the board's conclusion. And if one goes to page 433, if I may, paragraph 3.4.1, the report reads,
Let him get
paragraph
there
4,
first.
page 433, paragraph 3.4.1. Do you have it?
Yes.
As executive authority and shareholder representative of the state, it is incumbent upon the Minister of Public Enterprises to exercise the rights of the shareholder to appoint the CEO of Transnet in general meeting. In keeping with company law and corporate good governance codes such as King 3, it is important that the shareholder engages in a meaningful and constructive fashion with the board in selecting a CEO to lead a company, to lead the company. Do you have any comment on that? Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah.
In this regard, the paragraph continues, finding a suitable candidate for appointment as Transnet CEO, considering the company's impact on the economy, the magnitude of its infrastructure build program, and global economic context, is a task with high impact and potential risk. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yes.
Then if we may proceed to page 434. The conclusions of this section relating to the process from a factual point of view are set out in paragraph 3.4.5 on page 434. Do you have that?
Yes.
The first bullet if I may summarize, mentions that the recruitment process conducted by the board has been robust in assessing both internal and external candidates. The second bullet says the investigation of alleged misconduct on the part of Mr. Siyabonga Gama is not trumped up or trivial, but potentially significant, and the board will be failing in its fiduciary duty if it does not complete the investigation in accordance with due process. You would have been informed then of both those observations, I take it.
The microphone must be able to catch the
Okay.
response, yes.
Okay.
Was your answer yes?
Okay.
Yes, okay.
The third bullet reads, the board is confident that the substance and method of the recruitment and selection process were kept discreet from the investigation. Discreet in that sense means separate from, as I understand the sentiment there. At page 435, that's over the page, the third, fourth, and fifth bullets, if I may read the first bullet, at no stage did the board indicate that it has shortlisted Mr. Gama as second in line, preferred candidate to Mr. Pravin Gordhan, and the board embarked on an extended search after the withdrawal of Mr. Pravin Gordhan, as it was not confident that the other candidates available, including Mr. Siyabonga Gama, was suitable for the position. The board would have communicated, or that would have been communicated to you in the report. Am I correct?
I think so.
The next bullet reads, I have had an opportunity to peruse the independent assessments in respect of all the candidates interviewed by the board and have confidence in the recommendation by the board that Mrs. Sipho Maseko, Tao Mordwe, and Khomotso Pehlele are, in order of preference, the most suitable candidates for appointment as CEO. That also would have been communicated to yourself in the report, that this had the board's approval and executive authority approval.
Yes.
And then in the last bullet, the urgency of the appointment is stressed. It reads, in the interest of establishing leadership stability at Transnet, an appointment of a CEO be made without undue delay, and that the ultimate criteria should be the confidence that the board and the shareholder has in the competence of the candidate to lead the organization. Do you have any comment in relation to that observation?
No, no comment.
Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it?
Sorry?
Do you accept that?
Well, he says no comment. No comment says he has
Is
no
that
opinion
because you
on
don't
the
wish to
I
comment,
said
or
no
because you'd have
comment.
no issue with it? That's what I wanted to clarify. Do you have any issue with that?
No, I don't have an issue.
And then finally, the recommendation is at page 436. It is recommended that the President notes the contents of this memorandum and approves the submission of a cabinet memorandum recommending the appointment of Mr. Sipho Maseko as Transnet CEO. It seems, before I ask you to comment, Mr. Zuma, that the process here was that the board would have undertaken its selection process, recorded that selection process, and presented it to you in this memorandum. I don't know what other processes might have been followed, and asked you to approve the submission of a cabinet memorandum recommending the appointment of Mr. Sipho Maseko as Transnet CEO. So you would have been involved prior to it going to cabinet, as I understand it here, as a matter of fact, whatever the other processes might have been. Did you respond to this recommendation?
I think so. I think I responded, if I remember.
Maybe before you make a final answer on that or move on to this, I see that at the end of that report, Ms. Barbara Hogan was asking you to note the contents of the report
Yes.
and to approve that to approve the submission of a cabinet memorandum recommending the appointment. I'm mentioning it because earlier on, I think you did emphasize that ministers would come to the president for the president to note
Yes.
before certain matters where they would then be taken to cabinet.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Just before we leave the report, Mr. Zuma, again, this is really a request for some information and assistance from you. If one goes to page 446, this is part of an opinion.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius. I think I may have interrupted both you and Mr. Zuma. You had asked him a question whether he had responded to this report, and I think he had indicated that he thought he had, but
Yes,
he might not
I'll come
have
back
finished.
to that, Chair, because I just
Yes.
don't want to leave the report now, and I'm
Yes, well, I want to know the answer.
Allow me to do so.
No, but I want to know the answer.
Well,
Yes. Mr. Zuma, did you respond to this memorandum, if you remember, this report?
Hey, there were so many memorandums.
You can't remember?
You know, if they come like this, unless there is a problem
Yes.
where you could say this, no, it cannot move. Generally,
Yes.
because we are not deciding the final thing.
Yes.
It's allow the process to go.
Yes.
Yes.
So normally you would
Yes.
grant the approval that a minister is asking for unless there was a problem.
Yes. At times, ministers don't even come. At times, they send the document.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
look at the document. What is important is that if at all there's a problem, I'll then indicate that, no, don't take it to the cabinet right now
As yet.
until we discuss. But generally,
Yes.
it's just a formality, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as to what you did with regard to this one, you are not able to remember, or you are able to remember?
No, I'm saying I'm not able to remember.
Okay.
Because they come all the time.
Yes.
To remember one in the
Yes.
many of them,
Okay.
because it's not coming for me to discuss.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
to say this is what we've done. The
Yes.
process has come up to this point.
Yes.
We are now going to the cabinet.
Yes.
Normally, if I did not, for an example, say anything, the memorandum goes.
Okay.
If there's anything that is particular, I would then say, Minister, the memorandum, so and so, there's a problem I would like to discuss with you,
Yes.
or I will discuss the problem.
Yes.
It doesn't mean, if, for an example, I did not respond, then the memorandum does not go. It goes the process,
Yes.
particularly the officials. They will be talking more For an example, the official from the minister will say to the official who deal with the cabinet things, has the president said anything on this one? They'll say, no, nothing, no problem, it goes.
Yes.
Now, I'm just saying, and there are many
Yes.
where that happens.
Yes.
I think if we take that process, it did not necessarily, even if you don't agree with it or not, it must go to cabinet.
Yes. So if ever the president were to say to a minister, no, don't take this one to cabinet as yet, I want to discuss something with you about it, it would be something quite important.
Yes, absolutely.
If it's not something so important, the idea would be to say, take it there, we will discuss at cabinet.
Absolutely.
Yes. But in the presidency, would there be records of any correspondence if, for example, you can't remember now, but if you did respond by way of a memo to the minister or a letter, would you know whether there would be such records in the presidency, or you wouldn't know?
In this process, we don't necessarily write to
ministers?
the ministers.
Okay.
Either you ask the minister to come to say, I seek a clarification here or so,
Yes.
Or you talk to the, even to the official from the
Yes.
presidency or
Yes.
the people who are in charge of the cabinet, the secretariat. So tell Minister so and so there's this kind of an issue.
Okay.
Maybe we'll clarify it in the meeting or whatever.
Yes. Okay.
Unless the matter is more serious.
Okay.
When the president feels this cannot pass.
Yes. Okay.
Simply because the deeper discussion about anything here will be in the cabinet.
Okay.
The president at times might feel, this one, but I should not
Stop it.
delay this. But in the meeting, the president will say at his own time, Minister, just clarify this one. It depends how it goes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
May I ask, Mr. Zuma, the memorandum having been submitted to you with a recommendation, who would have, in your office, had to ensure that it went further to cabinet? Would there be a responsibility within the presidency to do that? How would that work?
Yes, it is the cabinet secretariat who do the up and down, whether the thing must go or not go, or whatever. For the president is to look at the thing, be aware of what is happening, also with an aim of guiding the meeting properly. And the secretariat, if there's something, for an example, because they know the process, that they don't think is fine, they could even deal with the department on their own to say, please put this right or something,
Okay.
or alert the president.
Yes. Okay.
Before we leave the report or memorandum that was given to you, I'd just like to ask you one question to assist us. If you have no recollection or ability to answer, that's also fine. But if one goes to page 446, read 446, at the bottom of the page, paragraph 5, you'll see reference to a protocol. And under the heading General 5.1, it reads, the protocol was published by the Department of Public Enterprises in 1997 with a view to inculcating good governance in the SOEs in accordance with King Code of 2002. The protocol does not have legislative effect, but sets out the principles of corporate governance for SOEs. The protocol also deals with the appointment, disqualification, and removal of directors. Do you know anything about that protocol?
Yes, I remember it slightly, yeah. I think there is. I can't remember the details in it.
Yes.
But there was a protocol.
There's just an interesting paragraph quoted in the next paragraph under the head Appointment of Directors, paragraph 5.1.6.1 in inverted commas. It reads, "The performance of the SOE depends on the capabilities and performance of its board. It is therefore imperative that when appointing directors, the shareholder should ensure that the board is properly constituted. In this regard, the board should at all times comprise of individuals with integrity and accountability, competence, relevant and complementary skills, experience and expertise. This is aimed at avoiding possible dominance by any one director or blocks of directors, and above all, ensuring commitment to the success of the SOE and the satisfaction of the shareholder." Were you aware of that? Or do you have any comment in relation to that?
No. No comment.
You put two questions at the same time, Mr. Pretorius. The one was whether he was aware of that. The other was whether he has comment. He has already said he has no comment. Were you aware of that at the time?
Yes, I think there was this
paragraph.
provision, yeah.
Okay,
I think so.
okay, thank you.
We have heard this morning in relation to the appointment of board members of state-owned entities, your comments, Mr. Zuma, and I think you said it was normal or happened most of the time, you correct me if I'm wrong, that the minister would engage with the president from time to time to discuss candidates.
Yes, I said so.
Is that correct? Did this apply to heads of government departments as well?
Yeah,
That practice.
It would apply as well.
Chair, I'm about to go back to the statement of Ms. Hogan. Perhaps I should just conclude. Paragraph 40 on page 408.
Paragraph
40 on page 4, read 408.
400 and
Page 448, but the paragraph, Mr. Pretorius, you said what paragraph?
40.
I can't see 40 at page 448.
Chair, by
Page 408 or page 448? Let's talk about the page first.
408.
Okay, I may have misled Mr. Zuma. I thought you said 448.
Oh, 448, I'm sorry.
Yeah?
I'm following instructions. Read 408.
408, okay, that's the page.
Paragraph
Let's get there
40.
first. Let's get there first, then we can talk about the paragraph. I am at page 408 and I can see paragraph 40. Are you there, Mr. Zuma?
yeah, I'm there.
Okay, thank you.
In that paragraph, she said that she sent the memorandum to you. She describes it as a comprehensive report on or around 28 July 2009. And then she says in the last sentence, however, President Zuma did not respond. I presume she means to her. Do you know whether you did respond to her or not?
I don't remember. As I said earlier, if the report comes, in the majority of cases, for the president to understand and read the report, but not necessarily to respond at all material times, because the reports don't end with the president. The reports are the final area of looking at the report is the cabinet.
Chair, would that be a convenient time?
Yes, we'll take the lunch adjournment now, and we will resume at 2 o'clock. We adjourn.
Yabona ke baba so. Kwenza sisheshe